Alright, hey, what's going on, guys? So basically today we're going to be doing the motor pull on this. I'm going to be doing the head gaskets. So just this video is only going to demonstrate how to pull out the motor. The radiator already drained out the fluid. The oil I already drained out the fluid too as well. The oil, I do not have a video of that, but it is a 17mm drain plug for that. Now there's going to be quite a few little tips that I'm going to teach you on this. There's other ways you can approach this. Somebody's going to have a different way to say something, but I will give you at least multiple options on this part. Now, if you wanted to see how to take out the radiator, I do have another video. I will put that down on the link, probably in this video. And, I mean, that's pretty much it. So, we'll go ahead and start this video off this intro. Alright, so first things first, we're going to go ahead and take off this 10mm cover. So you're just going to pull that guy out, lift this guy right out. I will be showing this. This is all going to be a fast forward. Normally this air pump will have a little cover. I already took that off. It'll be there. You'll just have this little clip and then you'll just pull it back. The tabs might break on it just because it's a little bit old. Now we'll go ahead and take off the air pump. There's going to be a clamp right there. Then we're going to have this plug to the clamp. I already loosened these 12mm bolts right here. Just wanted to make sure that that was going to be it for this. So we'll go ahead and take that. And then we have this little wire harness connector that's going to this air pump. We need to unplug that. Then we need to take off the alternator bolts. I believe it's going to be a 10mm. We'll just pop this guy right back up. So yeah, this is going to be a 12mm. If yours is aftermarket, usually they're 13mm. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the AC compressor clutch line. Then you can either pull out the motor with the AC compressor, and you just have to drain out the refrigerant to a certified shop so that they can recover the refrigerant. Or if you don't want to deal with that hassle, what you're going to do, we're going to have to take off the battery. That's actually the first thing that you're actually going to have to do. Sorry about that. So start this first and then work your way around. But we're going to have to take off the battery. These are going to be 10s. And then we're going to have to take off the bracket. Pull out the battery of the car because that's where we're going to sit the AC compressor right over here. Then we're going to have to take off our fuel lines. These are quick disconnects. So you just pinch this. So the top and return line. So this is going to be the feed line, return line, and I believe this is the evap line. So the evap line, you're just going to need a hose clamp pliers. Same thing right here. We're going to have to take off this hose, and then we're going to have to use a flathead screwdriver to take that. 112 right there that we're going to go ahead and take off, and then disconnect this hose from the blow off valve. And also I already hit the exhaust bolts with penetrating oil because we're going to be taking off the downpipe. Then we're going to, on this part of the intercooler on the passenger side, we're going to be taking off these two 12mm bolts. And the same thing for the power steering. You can take off the lines right now, or you can just move everything all aside at once. That's what I'm going to try to do. I just don't want to make a mess. And then plus, if you are going to be taking off the lines, you do need to replace the gaskets. I believe this one will be fine. You can actually reuse that. But the feed line, I believe you're going to have to replace the O-ring on that, because if not, you're gonna actually be getting some power steering issues. Then we're going to go ahead and disconnect the intake box flathead right here. I know obviously it's probably going to be stock or aftermarket, but there should be some 10mm bolts. I'm going to go ahead and take that off. And if there's anything that I missed, I'll go ahead and list that right up. Alright, if you're having a hard time like me on these quick disconnects, so normally you're supposed to just squeeze right here on these little tabs. There's like these little indentations right here. You can see that. You would squeeze on these indentations right there, and then that'll open up the inside. Well, these are just pretty hard to get off. So what you can do is you can actually disconnect them from up here on the fuel rail. So we can disconnect them right there. So you're just going to need a Phillips screwdriver for that. So I'm just going to disconnect the lower one. So to take off this little bolt, you're going to need something with a little offset. So, I mean, I'm using a Monsters. This is going to be 12 and a 14. But there's the part number MST12X14. If you can find something that has a little offset, that'll work. Now also, let's say if you can't take this off, you can actually take this whole bracket off with the AC compressor. I think I'm just going to show you how to do that right now, just in case if some of you don't have this specific tool. So I'm going to try to do this as best as I can. Also, if you did have the belt right here, you can actually cut it off, which would be the fastest way. Or you can get the belt stretch tool. Or you can use a flathead screwdriver and then kind of pick into the grooves to dig it out. But cutting it out is pretty fast, and the belt's not that expensive. So now we're going to take off the 14mm bolts that are holding in this AC bracket. So it's going to be 1, 2, and the third one's right here. Also, there's one more bolt that I didn't see. It is right there, that little 14mm bolt. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take off this 10mm bolt to move out the little purge solenoid so that we don't break none of these tabs. Now we're going to go ahead and take off the power steering pump. Now we're going to go ahead and take off the intake. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and take off the power steering bracket. It's going to be 3 12mm bolts that are holding it in. So we're going to have one right here, and another one right here, and then there's going to be one on the bracket that's below. So this is the extension that I'm going to use for the back, and then you're going to go in between these and this hose. I will go ahead and show that. Alright, so the extension is going to be sitting between these two solenoids. That's going to go right there. It's going to get to that bolt. Make sure that this is fully seated in. Here's the other two 12mm bolts. So those are the two of those that we're going to go ahead and take. So the bolt on the right side is going to be the longest, and then the other two are going to be the same size. And don't forget to disconnect this connector. So now we're going to go ahead and take off the slave cylinder, the starter. For this bracket right here, the ground wire, we can go ahead and just set that aside back there. And then there's this wire right here. This will be the solenoid wire. We could just squeeze and disconnect that. You just squeeze one part of it and then it'll come right out. We can leave the power cable onto the starter because we're just going to move that aside. Now, to take off the bolt, you're going to be using either 3-inch or with a 3-inch or with the deep socket 14 mil, or you can use a 14 mil with the 6-inch. So I'm just going to be using the regular short stubby 14 mil with the 6-inch extension. We're going to take off these two 14 millimeter bolts right up here. Then right under here, so right under here, it'll help if you had a flex ratchet, just to take off those. So you'll just take off those. So there's two bolts that are holding the starter. The other one's kind of on the opposite side right here. So it'll be right down below there, but we'll go ahead and just take off those bolts. So just remember, the top bolt is going to be taller than the bottom bolt. You can see the difference in there. Now that we got the starter out, we'll just go ahead and let it hang on the CV axle. So now we're going to go ahead and take off the turbo exhaust bolts. So we're going to go ahead and take off 1, 2. There's going to be a third one right under here. 4 and 5 bolts. So there's going to be 5 bolts in total. This is what you're going to pretty much need is a 3-inch extension, and then make sure this is a 6-point. If it's not a 6-point, you're going to be stripping the bolts and you're going to be having issues. So you're basically just going to loosen these bolts from under here, unless if you can reach from up top. And so where the exhaust is going, there should be one bolt to the transmission. We're going to need to take off that 14 millimeter bolt. So after you get that pried back, and then you're just basically going to push this whole exhaust back. As you can see, now we're all down. Alright, so pretty much now we're just going to do the little basics. We're going to need to disconnect this. We're going to take this whole harness off, and we'll take that off. Well, I'm going to make another separate video of a teardown. So we'll go ahead and disconnect this harness. Now we need to take off this, like it's kind of like a torque strut bar or something, but there's another name for it. And then we're going to go, that's 14 millimeter. There's one bolt right here, and then another one, there's a nut on this side that you need to hold. Then you're going to have 1, 2 14 millimeter bolts. Although the bell housing bolts are going to be 14 millimeters. And then you're going to have 2 more right down there. I'm going to show you how to take those off. And then the same thing on the other side. And then right here on the driver's side, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the inlet and outlet heater hoses. And then don't forget to take this guy off. Some of you might not have this. This is going to be aftermarket. And then on the passenger side where the oxygen sensor is, there's going to be a ground strap. You're going to take off that 10 millimeter. Then there's going to be 2 14 millimeters that are holding the motor mounts. So we're going to take off one. And then the other one is... The other one's right there. We're gonna go ahead and take off that one and then the other one. So there's there's gonna be 4 bottom bolts in total. So this one's a little bit pain in the butt. So the tool that you're actually going to use, short stubby 14 millimeter. I didn't use the socket. Make sure that it's a 6-point socket, not a 12-point, because you don't want to strip the threads. Then you need a swivel extension, and then the 3-inch extension, and it'll fit perfect just right there. And then we'll loosen that. I already loosened up the bolt so I can just process the video faster. And then for this top bolt right here, you're actually going to access it right over the CV axle. So just like this. So you're just going to take it off just like that. And then the same thing for the passenger side too as well. And one thing I forgot to mention, same thing for the heater hoses. Those are going to leak coolant obviously, so just be warned on that, have something to catch it. And then after that, we're pretty much ready to take off the motor. Also, I forgot to mention, there's one more other ground strap right here on the driver's side too as well. So we'll go ahead and take that off. That's 10 mil too as well. Alright, so we're pretty much ready to pull out the motor. So don't forget your vacuum line, if you had a boost gauge, and then the brake booster hose. We're going to go ahead and take it out just from the brake booster itself. And then our mounting points are going to be from right here where the old, or where the AC compressor was. So we used one of the old bolts for it. And then right here on this bracket, I used the bolt from this bracket. So I used the bolts and nut from that bracket, and I moved it over to right here so I could use that. Now, for the compressor, if you already disconnected the lines, you don't have to worry about this. But if you haven't, you're gonna need to work your way around. As you lift it, you're gonna have to kind of move the line out the way so it doesn't get caught up. But if you have a second hand, it'll work out very easy. But I'm by myself at the moment right now, so hopefully this works out pretty easy. I'm just gonna fast forward it. If I see any tips that I could throw out there, I'll stop the video and mention that. But I think I'm just gonna mount the camera to the cherry picker itself and then let it be a fast forward. So remember, you're just going to kind of lift up a little bit and then pull towards the front. And then right here, this helps out a lot. If you jack up the transmission a little bit, it'll make it easier to pull out the motor. Not too much. I want to say about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. You want to lift up a little bit so the motor can come out pretty easy. Now be careful, if you see your chains binding up against the intake, go ahead and stop and then adjust of how you need it, because obviously we don't want to crack the intake. It's not like the older ones, like the blob eye, where it's just a metal intake, so we don't really have to worry about that as much. But this one, it will break, so we don't want to invest more money into that part. So yeah, we'll go ahead and start with the pull out. Alright, so got this bad boy pulled out. It was just a little bit more trickier than what I thought it was going to be. I've done a few of these before, but this is my first time doing it on the 11, where as versus the slave cylinder will come out, but I know this makes no difference on what other people are going to say. But what I did was that you have the transmission lifted up just like that. So when you're pulling it out, that's why you want to unbolt this guy off. So when you're lifting, you want to make sure that this is lifted up just enough to where you can move the you kind of want to pull up on the exhaust to tilt up, and then it'll slide right out very easy. It shouldn't be pretty difficult. If you need to, you can get a pry bar and pry in between the both casings. And that's pretty much it. We're gonna go ahead and mount this up, pull off the heads, but that, again, that's gonna be another video. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. So we're gonna go ahead and do the install right after we finish doing the heads and sending them to the shop. Alright, so we are ready for the install. So we're gonna go ahead and push this guy in, make sure everything is good. Alright, so we got the motor in. Basically, I used the 2 guide pins on the bottom of the motor to go in. Actually, one of them was actually bent, but I think that was kind of prior to that, because I remember when I was pulling it out, it was a little bit difficult. And as I was playing with it, trying to put it on the jack stand or the engine stand, I noticed it was spinning freely, and then as you would spin it, it would kind of like wobble away. So it would go in a certain position, but that's no biggie. And then another thing too, to clean up the dowel pins or the guide pins for the mating surface where the motor and the transmission would meet at, that would help out too. And once you get the two bottom bolts, the two guide bolts, and you put on the nuts, once you tighten those down, kind of lift up from the exhaust from right up there to, and then push right here with your hand. And then once this gets seated in more, make sure that it's seated in, and then thread this in by hand. Now this is the longer bolt that's gonna sit right up there. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. So the rest of the stuff is gonna be a fast forward. I'm not gonna get this started today because I still gotta order the PCV hose. So I'm kind of bummed out about that, but whatever. Oh, and then I put a strap right here just to hold the AC compressor in, and then I was having the bungee cords hang out right there at the shock. Doesn't necessarily have to be that long. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and seat down the motor mounts down onto the little guide pins. Now while I'm holding the exhaust with my hand in the front under the crankshaft area, now I'm just going to be kind of pushing this guy around while lowering the cherry picker. So both motor mounts are in place, so we'll go ahead and tighten the nuts on that. So basically I'm just going to kind of talk about what I'm going to do next. So we're going to go ahead and tighten down the bolts on the transmission, because it's going to be all fast forward type of thing. Then we're going to go ahead and put on the starter, put on the heater hoses, put on the slave cylinder, and we'll put on the grounds from the exhaust that goes onto the chassis. So we'll do that. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put on the AC compressor belt. So basically, this actually is just like you need a stretch belt tool, but if you don't have that, it's actually nothing to worry about actually. So what we're going to go ahead and do, we're going to need a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to go ahead and stretch the belt, and then we need obviously the 22 millimeter. So we'll place that right in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this right here against the belt, and then I'm just going to pry against the grooves. And there you have it, we got that belt on. Now it's a little bit of work, usually it doesn't take that long. It should probably take about maybe about 6 turns, but it's alright. It's on there now. So now as for the power steering belt, that will go on pretty easily. So I went ahead and put in the radiator. Don't forget that these two brackets are going to be 12 millimeter. Again, if you want to watch for the install, you can watch out the other video of how I did the radiator replacement, so you can see how the install was. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and just start hooking up the wire looms. I'm just waiting on one specific hose right here, so I can actually start putting everything back together, or else I would have had all this complete. But we're going to just wait on that one PCV hose. And I did put this guy, is that showing? Let's see. Yeah. So I did put this guy right here. That was the only thing that you're going to need to connect. This will go up to the blow-off valve. And then we'll wait for that one specific hose so we can start putting up everything and then add the coolant. Alright, so we got our parts. I guess in order to get one of these new pieces, you need to buy the whole intake duct, so kind of sucks. But other than that, that is no biggie. Just a little bit more time on waiting. Some little extra details that we have to wait on. Now, for this hose, make sure you get this part number right there. For the front of the valve cover. Now, I really had a hard time trying to find this hose because the dealer said it's not available, or they couldn't find the part. I just don't know what was up with those guys, but it was kind of irritating me. This is like the 4th time of me ordering a hose and they couldn't find it properly. So now I talked to a different guy that was in there, and he got it right away. He understood what I needed, so I was very happy on that. So didn't have to waste time on that. So we're going to go ahead and get back to this. So we'll go ahead and just slide this right here. And then we'll put it right behind here where this other, the plastic tube is.